Welcome to the Lift Oneself podcast, where we break mental health stigmas through conversations. I'm your host, Nat, and we dive into topics about trauma and how it impacts the nervous system. Yet we don't just leave you there. We share insights and tools of self-care, meditation, and growth that help you be curious about your own biology. Your presence matters. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. Help our community grow. Let's get into this. Oh, and please remember to be kind to yourself. Welcome to the Lift Oneself podcast, June. I'm so thankful you're here with me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Would you join me for a meditation so that we can ground ourselves in our breath?
Of course.
And for the listeners, as I always tell you, if you are driving or doing anything with your visual, please do not close your eyes. I want you to be safe as well as everybody around you to be safe. Yet the other prompts you're able to follow. If, again, you are getting too relaxed, then again, safety. So please stop and just fast forward over into our dialogue. Yet I would encourage you to come back to this meditation so that you can take this mindful moment for yourself. So June, I'll ask you to get comfortable in your seating, and you're going to begin to gently close your eyes, and you're going to begin breathing in and out through your nose. And you're going to bring your awareness to watching your breath go in and out through your nose. Don't try to control your breath. Just watch its rhythm while keeping your awareness on your breath. There may be some sensations or feelings coming up in the body. Let them come up. You're safe to feel. You're safe to let go. Surrender the need to control. Release the need to resist and just be. Be with your breath. Drop into your body. Keeping your awareness on your breath. There may be some thoughts or memories that popped up. It's fine. Gently bring your awareness back to your breath. Just keep your awareness of watching your breath go in and out. Now, while staying with your breath, June, I'm going to ask you in your mind to create an intention you want to bring forth in this conversation and for the listeners. And when you've created that intention, I'm going to ask you to release it in your mind, allowing it to drop down into your nervous system, down your neck, down into your throat, down into your chest, filling your heart, filling your lungs, down into your abdomen, into your stomach, into your life force. Now, while still staying with your breath and going deeper into your body, allowing that intention to surround your energy field and still staying focused with your breath. Now, while still staying focused with your breath, at your own time and at your own pace, you're going to gently open your eyes while staying with your breath. How's your heart doing?
It's good. It's doing good.
Can you let the listeners know who June is?
June as a person or as a mom, there's so many aspects to June. June as the business person is, she's a hard worker and she tries to get all of her goals. I have all of these goals. I'm June as the mom. I'm a mom. Obviously, I have my daughter, and then I have my angel baby, Caleb. And I just try to do everything I possibly can I say to make them good kids. And I always tell everybody, I only wanted to have to go to therapy once a week. That's kind of what, the running joke that I have. And just have fun and make memories with her. Self person that I am and the stuff that I want in life. I have bad anxiety. I have really bad anxiety. So I try to do things for me and do things where I know how to calm myself and I know how to be the best version of myself. And it's educating and just learning. But I think for any woman, there's totally different aspects that of who you are. It just depends on they say which hat to put on. But that's kind of me in a nutshell.
So I'm going to give a trigger warning to some of the listeners. As you heard June mention Caleb, her angel baby, this may be triggering to some of the listeners because we will be talking about grief in the trauma and, as you just mentioned, the anxiety that goes on in the day to day. So I just want to give a forewarning to the listeners that at any point, if this becomes too activating for you, just pause and take a moment to feel what you're feeling and be there for yourself and come back to the conversation. And if the conversation is too much, then, pause it till you have the ability to navigate the waves internally. I want to welcome Caleb into this conversation. For myself, how I view it, energy doesn't die, it transforms. And when people transition, they're on the other side of love. And if we're willing, we're able to feel their presence, feel that love, feel their energy. Can you describe Caleb to us?
Okay. Caleb was, well, when he was born, I had a complete placental abruption. I'll start by that. And he had like a lot of special needs. He was a special needs child. And one of the things that he had was like seizure disorder, and it's just very painful. A lot of muscle problems, and he had CP and stuff like that. Cerebral palsy, for those that don't know what CP is. And he was the happiest child. He was always smiling, which is one thing that they said he was never going to be able to do. He was never going to be able to smile. He was never going to be able to stand and everything like that. And he was just such a fighter. And he always had this happy spirit, even though they said he shouldn't be. And I think that the takeaway with Caleb and his whole life that people could say, the people that did know him, was that he was just a happy child for everything that he had to go through. And, we don't like shots as a kid, as an adult. Kids don't like shots or going to the doctor, and he had like six doctors. So he was just very happy, and he was very, like to me, like he was so strong for everything that he went through. So I think those two things, him just being so happy all the time and him being so strong through no matter what we had to put him through, what kind of test.
Now he transitioned. Can you let the listeners know how you had to relate with yourself through that grief and through that trauma?
Yeah. So before I go into that, like the night that he passed, I had to do CPR on him. I also was working in law enforcement, and I knew everybody that was coming out here, from EMS to the police officers to the people at the hospital. So I had not only my child loss, the grief that I was dealing with losing Caleb, but I had so many different aspects of it because, like, in law enforcement, it was like you got to be strong. You can't show your emotions, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And then, you're trying to act normal. And when these people are calling, and then I had the trauma for what I had to do that night. It's- Who I don't think any parent could ever imagine having to do CPR on your own child. And then the fact that you were doing CPR on your child and you didn't save them, and kind of like the grief with that. So I was dealing with all of those different aspects. I got to be strong. I can't show my emotions. Oh my gosh, I had to do work on my child. Then I was dealing with the aspects. I had all that going on, and then I also had to deal with the aspects of I didn't like the person I was. But whenever you go through something so traumatic, and I think it's anything traumatic that you personally feel is traumatic. For me, obviously, it was my child loss. Look back on your life and like, man, and like I can remember thinking, man, I'm a spoiled brat, and I don't want to be like this anymore. So I had to deal with that, like the way that. And I don't think that I say my mom used to say ugly person. I wasn't an ugly person. I was kind to people, but like there was different aspects that I wanted to change. So I think when people go into grief, they think that it's just one thing. You're dealing with your child loss. For me, it was dealing with your child loss, but it's every aspect of your life because as much as I would like to say that, and people say it all the time, I just want my life to go back to the way it used to be. And once you hit that trauma or that grief or whatever you're going through, your life will never be the same. And I think that's so hard for people to understand. And so I had to deal with so many different aspects, which brought up the anxiety, that brought up the depression, that brought up those deep places that you never want to go as a human, but then when you reach them and you start to climb, which is hard to do, you're like, I never want to go there again. And you think, and another thing too is like I thought that I was doing so good, and then I got pregnant with my daughter. And that brought up a whole bunch of, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose her. Oh my gosh, God's going to take her away from me. It brought up that stuff. And then vacations with us, like being in law enforcement and losing a child is like the worst case scenario because I'm like, oh my God, someone's going to kidnap her. Oh my gosh, someone's going to hurt her, in all the different ways that you hear and that I deal with on a daily basis. And so then I had that stuff too. So I guess it's like for me, like you have to learn what what your triggers are, and you have to learn how you personally can deal with it. I think everybody has all these great steps, but each person is an individual. And even though you think, oh, well, I'm doing great, it's a lifelong thing because there's always going to be something that triggers you. I thought I was doing fine, and then I had my daughter, and there was a whole nother bunch of triggers that I didn't even know even existed in my mind. Um, but yeah, that's how I deal with it, kind of how I go through it.
It's real warrior work to go through another pregnancy after you've lost a child,
Yeah.
because that anxiety of it being this other child being taken away from you can be debilitating because you're more obsessed of being afraid of the pain that you just navigated through and not wanting to go, yet wanting the excitement of this new child. So it's like
Mhm.
having these two and three kind of things going on that are so overwhelming to the personal experience, and like trying to bring yourself back, and then you go out and you come back in and you went out there and you came back. So it's a roller coaster of emotions and relating. What were the tools that helped you to find a space where you could find safety in your body, that you could find a way to face life experiences? Because like I used to in my previous life work in the law enforcement, so I understand that um, career already activates your nervous system all the time. So you try to come home and relax, and there's no way to relax because it takes a while to
Mhm.
come off that, but you got to go right back to work again.
Yeah.
And then having this grief and as you mentioned, the performative, that I'm not able to feel my authentic emotions in the moment because I have to put on this persona of law enforcement and what that looks like to serve in my career. What were the tools that helped you to navigate through all of that?
I did it the abnormal way. Whenever you lose anybody, they say go to therapy, go to group counseling, and I'm an extreme introvert. And so for me, I'm like, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me. So what I ended up doing was educating myself a lot. And at first I didn't know like, hey, educate yourself, but I tried when I started with my grief, I tried to go ahead and do everything I possibly could to where I didn't even have to think about it. And one of the things that I did was I got into a master's degree program with for forensic psychology that deals with the
Okay.
criminal mind. And I started learning about the mind. I started learning about all these different things. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool how the mind can, it just tricks you. Your mind can trick you. And so I started getting into a lot of that. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. I wonder what the mind does with grief. I wonder what the mind does with child loss grief. I wonder what the mind does with, having another child and what's the mind telling you then? And I started doing that, and I started educating myself. I did a lot of NLP education, and then I did neuro linguistic programming. For those that don't know, I'm sorry, we use abbreviations, and then people don't know what they are. And then after I got into that, I really enjoyed that, and I learned a lot about that, and then after I did that, then I did CBT which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And I just started going into those type of therapies and how by doing this one specific thing, you can help rework your mind and think of it differently. And that's how I went about doing my grief. Now that I'm years in and stuff, I go to therapy. I've been to therapy. I found that one person because I don't think therapists, like, you have to mesh with them. That's my word, is you have to mesh with them, and they have to understand you. And I found like the perfect person that he understands the child loss, even though he has not been through it, and he understands the law enforcement aspect of what I've been through. I think you start with what you feel comfortable with, and that's the biggest thing with grief. If you don't feel comfortable with something, you're not going to work through it. That's how I did it. I educated myself because I knew that it was all on me. And I wanted to do this by myself. And that goes back to the introvert part of me where I don't want people around. I want to do it by myself. And that's how I started going through it in my wrapping around what it was doing to my body and what it was doing to me as a person.
Have you engaged with your nervous system?
Yeah, I think I have a little bit. I do more now. But obviously this happened back in 2012. It's more of a recent thing. And it's educating myself on that because like self was like, I still to this day, I'm like, what is self-care? Like, what does this mean? Self-love, and I still like educate myself on that. But when I go and do stuff like that, it's in the morning time. I get up early. And before the anxiety starts, before anything starts in my day, I have that 30 to 45 minutes that it's just peace and calm. And that's before the job, before my daughter, before the dogs need to get fed, before everything. I'd have that for me. And that's when that comes into play. I've started in the last 2 weeks actually doing it at night as well. My daughter and I, we live on land and it has a big hay field out in front. And I go outside and I take 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes just to watch the sunset when it's going. And just to get that end of the day release. But I've been doing it in the morning time for a while, but now I'm starting in the past 2 weeks, I've been doing it at night too.
To do that mindful practice and allow the body to somatically release. You're
Mhm.
able to watch this and then see the absolute truth and the totality of what's bigger than you. And some
Yeah,
of, you don't have an answer why your Caleb had to transition. And I think
yeah,
that is the most heartbreaking part of grief, of not because our mind wants answers, our mind wants
yeah.
solutions, and we can create meaning for it to try to soothe, yet in the totality, we really don't know. You see, with the nervous system, it locks everything in it, and the nervous system has one function: don't die. And so
Mhm.
when it's activated in that fight or flight, it's in a lot of negative biases. And the anxiety starts to get activated because the nervous system wants to protect you from the things that you think will cause pain. That
Right.
could be emotional, physical, psychological. And
Mm.
because in the past, you had this significant rupture of a wound of being disorientated and thrown out into some kind of multiverse that you have to try to come back to reality right now and into your body. So that self-care is really finding things that would regulate your nervous system. And it's exactly what you said in the morning, finding those moments that I can just be still and the stillness doesn't feel threatening, and that I can feel these big emotions that come up, yet let them pass through me rather than push them down. And a lot of times, especially in law enforcement, you have to push those things down to be able to be cognitive of what you're dealing with. Yet
Mhm.
after a while, the body is looping and building up the energy because these emotions aren't being processed and felt. So that's why they say, like, it's really important, especially with grief, to have a practice every day, even if it's for 5 minutes, just to
Mhm.
feel some of those emotions. Yet it feels threatening because at the beginning of grief, the tears don't stop and the
Mhm.
belly aches and that deep void that's there is a challenge to navigate through that abyss. Because the other side of love that we aren't taught about, there's a whole abyss, and you're like, can I land somewhere? Can I feel some ground somewhere? And it's like, nope, there's no ground. So now with your daughter, which uh, can be feeling like a real threat in certain parts.
Mhm.
And how old was Caleb when he transitioned?
He was, I say 2.5. He was like 2 and 4 months.
And your
So
daughter's name?
Bella,
Bella. And how old's Bella now?
she's 10 now.
Okay. So you went through all that warrior work because I'm sure at two and a
Yeah.
half, you were probably a little
Yeah.
bonkers and
Yeah.
just like, it's going to repeat.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's horrible. And it's so funny because I had it when I had her, it was like traumatic, traumatic, traumatic. And then when it reached that time and I knew it was coming, so the anxiety started building up, when it reached that time, it got scary, because I hadn't, number one, I had not raised a child past 2.5. And then number two, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's getting ready to happen. And that's where and I blame it some on law enforcement too, is that, you get more like, no, you're not doing this, we're not going here, we're not going on vacation. And it got really bad for a long time. And um I know that it was just like I gotta release this, I don't know how. And you know, it was a lot of work on my mind. My mind's telling me this because of why. When it was a lot, I always say like a 3-year-old, why? You got to keep asking until you get down to the root of it. And that's what I had to do with her. Now that she's older, I still have it. Like if we're in our home, then I'm fine. But like vacations or somebody else watching her, but mostly vacations, I physically have nightmares. Where vacations are supposed to be happy-go-lucky for people, for me, it's very anxious because I'm not in my element. I can't protect her. And that's where that's what my mind goes to. And it's whenever I go there, I know how to do it. I have to ask why? And obviously I know why now, but it was at first when I was doing it, I was like, why am I waking up sweating? Why am I having these nightmares about everything that possibly could happen to her? Now, obviously now I'm better, but I still have it when I go, when it goes back to that whole thing where you're always going to be working. You're always going to be trying to figure out what's the best.
Yeah. Do you ever ask yourself what you're feeling?
Yeah, I do a lot. And when I'm feeling it, I ask, well, obviously you always, when you're feeling, you have that one emotion that pops in your head right off the bat, but there's usually more than just one. And a lot of times mine will come out as anxiety. Like that's the first thing that automatically comes out with me. But then after I feel that, it's the emotion, it's the sadness. And sometimes it's even the happiness. Like I can tell you, I was getting anxious because my daughter just got out of school, and I was getting anxious. Yeah, I was getting anxious because you have summer, and what is she going to do and stuff like that. But it was also happy because this year has not been the best for us. My husband asked for a divorce, and her dad left, and it was just like the happiness that we made it through, the happiness that she did it. So yes, that had anxiety on it, but there was also that emotion that, was hidden. So,
Mhm.
that's where that why comes in, and why I always go and I'm like, where's this going?
Yeah. Because a lot of us don't even know what our authentic emotions are. We have to
Hmm.
go through all these
Yeah.
layers that's secondary and these emotions that have been kind of the bodyguard to protect,
Hmm.
being able to get to the root because it's vulnerability. And with grief too, at times it's that you don't feel you are allowed to feel joy. Because
Yeah.
if I feel joy, then I won't feel the sadness for Kaleb.
I think another thing too is like when I start feeling happy, I go back to Caleb. I was very happy at that time. I had lived, and we were doing great and everything, and I was so happy. So my mind automatically goes to something bad's getting ready to happen.
Yeah,
If I'm feeling this way, something bad's getting ready to happen, and that goes hand in hand with my anxiety. So I think, I'm happy, something bad's getting ready to happen. Oh my gosh, what's getting ready to happen? There's the anxiety. There's where it's coming from. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I say I have to check myself on that a lot.
yeah,
And realize that not everything's going to be so bad.
yeah. What did I don't know if you had that experience yet. Did you have the experience of being challenged with God and
Yes.
having that?
Big. That was like one of the first things that came out. I wanted to know why. Why was I chosen to have to go through this? Because at the time, when he died or when he was born, I thought that was the worst thing because I had a complete placental eruption. I had lost 3.5 pints of blood, and Caleb wasn't breathing for weaned for so long, but we both lived. And I'm like, okay, well, we lived for each other. We're going to be fine now. And I was so accepting because I tell women this all the time. When you're having a child, you have all these goals and expectations for them when you're pregnant, oh, they're going to be a star football player. Or for me, it was they're going to play soccer and they're going to be straight A students and they're going to be this and that. And then when he was born and he had all the his special needs. So basically that child died, and I was going to have a special needs child where he had different goals. And I tell people that all the time is that, it's just so hard. It's I don't know where I was going with that, but it's I'm sorry, what were we just talking
Just
about?
take a moment. I blanked too because I was feeling the sadness that you were feeling. Because
Yeah.
to try to explain what the situation is, it was the conversation with God and
Yeah.
how you
Okay.
explain to parents about.
Yeah, so I had a special needs child now. And then, which was fine. It was just we had to set different goals for him. And then to go through that, and we finally figured it out. We finally figured out what medication that he needed, and we finally figured out a for him to move through life. Then all of a sudden you took him away from me.
Mhm,
And I was so angry,
mhm,
and just so mad. And I was just like, you don't suffer like this. You don't put people through this. I've already been through my worst time. I've already done the work, and I was okay with, everything that I've been through, I was okay with, but now you did this to me. And I lived like that for a really long time. Just because it was like I can't believe that I have to go through this. And you kind of touched on it earlier. Is like I wanted to know why, what happened to him. Like, did his heart stop? Did his mind, his brain stop? Like what we're doing everything right, and I never got that answer. We never got that answer, and so I like, why would you do this to me? Now I have to deal with my child loss. I don't even know what happened. And it was so much anger, but I had to get, and this is years later. It didn't come like, oh, well, a month in, I'm okay with God now. Years later, I had to understand that for me to keep healing and me keep doing the work, and for me to go to where I needed to go, where my purpose was, and to find this new path that I was going to learn, before Caleb, I had to realize that it was okay. and that I had to forgive him. And, I had to accept what, and I say my fate is, but I don't think like it's a bad fate. I think it was aligning me to a more purposeful life. I think that it was aligning me to do what I was meant to do. And I don't think I would be where I am now if I hadn't gone through all that stuff. Not saying that, yeah, I want to go through child loss again. Nobody wants to go through child loss or anything like that. But I've learned that all the trauma and the traumatic experiences that I've had in life has brought me, pushed me up a notch, I guess you could say, has made me better a person. But I had to realize that and I had to forgive. And
Mm.
to move forward and be who I need to be, I had to forgive finally.
Yeah. And to actually show up as a mother for Bella. Because that's the thing too of
Hmm.
the conversation of the dialogue. It's I have a friend that her son was murdered and she has two, he was the oldest and two other ones. So to grieve but still be a mother, like it's really challenging to hold those spaces.
Hmm.
And, forgiveness, how I define it is being able to open your heart back up because your heart's
Hmm.
closed and you don't want to feel anything. And, that anger and that sense of, because there's a protection of defense of wanting to protect your vulnerability and to bring that back out. It's like, I'm not bringing that back out. You've butchered it already. Like, I don't want to feel, I don't want to go through all of this. I don't want to be brought up to a high and then you're going to just take the chair out from underneath me. So, going through that experience, I'm thankful that you were able to be vulnerable and explain that. Because I know a lot of people will feel challenged that, well, I'm not allowed to have a challenging emotion with God or question God,
Hmm.
where it's like, well, of course,
Okay.
it's a human experience. Like,
Yeah.
this is discombobulating for your brain. And to feel all these emotions, that's something that was so precious and so attached to your vulnerability is now gone and you're
Hmm.
not going to question what brought it here. And that's the
Yeah.
process of healing. Like anger is one of the biggest processes. And like I tell my clients, it's like, okay, we're going to befriend anger. You're going to befriend rage so that your body can have expression in a way that
Yeah.
like, okay, you're going to have to start yelling in some pillows or go to a smash room and start smashing some things or go into a forest and start yelling and throwing some rocks
Mm.
just to have some expression because it's an energy that's in your body that needs some expression, not to rationalize or intellectualize or pathologize it. It's just give it some expression so that it
Yeah.
can be released and not stored in your body. Thank you so much for, opening that part up because some people find it very challenging to talk about faith in that aspect of going through the grief.
Yeah. I think yeah, you touched on something and I wanted to mention it. So you don't want to open up your heart again. And that goes with everything in life. And I wanted to touch on this because I know that there's other moms that have gone through child loss and then had children afterwards. I can remember when Bella was first born, I did not want to get close to her. I did not want to get attached to her. And a lot of people feel bad about that, but it's something that does happen. And I can remember being like, I don't, I love her, she's cute, but I don't want to, because if something happens to her, I can't go through this again. And obviously with a baby, like they coo and they're cute and you fall in love with them. And I finally, after a month or two, I finally did open up to her as her mother. But you do go through that. And a lot of people they feel bad because they feel like that. And it's just something that you're going to go through.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to throw that out there when you mentioned that. It's just that's something that people think bad of themselves for, but everybody feels it. It's just whether they admit it or not.
Exactly. And it's part of the nervous system trying to protect you. This is
Hmm.
something too vulnerable that I don't know that I have the capacity to go through the pain because love requires you to go through pain. You have to open
Yeah.
yourself up to feel and know that you're going to go through pain in some kind of way. And
Hmm.
there's a loss, and our minds don't go well with loss, whatever that looks like. And so thank you again for opening because, it's just like postpartum depression, where some women are wondering, like, why am I having these kind of thoughts? And why would I think about this or that? And these are human things that go on. And especially if you've experienced a lot of pain, the vulnerability of it trying to, like, your nervous system trying to protect you doesn't make sense because what the world tells you you should be feeling and going through is all bright and rosy. And it's like, well, what's this part and what is going on? And that's where, that's why I create this podcast in the way that I do, because I want it to be a whole with a W, not just doing a la carte of only seeing the shiny things. Like on the other side, there's some shadows, yet it doesn't mean that it's not a part of the shiny parts. So let's open
Mhm.
up the dialogue so that we can create the tools too. That all of a sudden, if I'm in this dark space, that I have somebody that I can connect with that isn't going to make
Mhm.
me feel even worse than I'm already making myself feel about not understanding all of what I'm experiencing. Because it, like, again, it doesn't make sense. It's like I'm
Yeah.
trying to, but I'm like, "Ooh, don't. And it's really protecting yourself from feeling that pain.
Yeah. And when you go through trauma, one thing, the way that I explain it to a lot of people, no matter what your trauma is, it's if your body thinks that it's trauma, if it's affecting you, it's your trauma. No matter if it's the worst child loss or losing a parent or losing that job you wanted or your husband walks out on you or your boyfriend that you thought you were going to marry walks out on you, that's your trauma. And it's just basically, if you're experiencing it for the first time, your mind is trying to assign it something. Should I feel sad? Should I be happy? Should I, it's your mind is going on and on and on, and you might not understand what's going on, and you might react a certain way, whether you have no emotion at all, whether you have, you're screaming and that's not you. Your mind is trying to catch up with whatever just happened to you. And we got to remember that is that, you're going to feel all these things because your mind is trying, like, okay, we've never felt this before. What do we need to do? Like, what
Mhm.
is this? And I think people just think that they should act a certain way. And obviously with child loss, I see it all the time. They're like, I had no emotion when I found out my child died. And I didn't. But mine
No.
goes with my career. And it also went with, I was like, oh, that fog, I was just like, this isn't happening.
Well, you
So
disassociate
remember
because
that.
that
Yeah.
numbing is that disassociation because it's too overwhelmed for your nervous system to
Yeah.
process. So it's
Yeah.
like we got to come out of this body right now because
Mhm.
this is too much and I got to protect you. So it's a
Yeah.
method of protection in that disassociation. And you're
Yeah.
walking and you're like, oh, but I should. And until you come in, and then it's like, oh, there's a tsunami of a flood that comes in. You're
Yeah.
like, that's why I did that, because I don't want to feel this. But it's
Yeah.
all in protection. And it's,
Yeah.
like I said, that's why I do the podcast like I do, because I think there's a lot of missing pieces in the mental health. And a lot of people are thinking they're doing it wrong, where it's like,
Mhm.
well, inquire about your biology. Like you are a mad scientist. You're like, okay, I got to find some answers. So I'm going to go and get some information about the mind. And then I'm going to study myself of how do I
Mhm.
relate to this so that I
Yeah.
can come back into my own experience and be able to feel and see things from a different perspective and shift it. Other people, they're going to consume alcohol, they're going to consume drugs.
Yeah.
Other people are going to be workaholics. Other people are like, it's all different ways that we process our experiences. And there's not this one right way. All I
Right.
know is the best part of your healing is coming back into your body so that you can feel those emotions.
Yeah.
And that in itself is warrior work because we have this analyzing of a mind that it needs to look a certain way, or we don't want to look messy. And we
Yeah.
cannot do that. Like the amount of clients that I say, okay, we're going to yell, you're going to yell in a pillow. I'll join you if you need me to. And they're like, I'm not doing that. That's for
Mhm.
babies. Like, we don't do that. And I'm like, okay, have you ever done it before? They're like, no. And I'm like, well, that's why your body's like so averse to this, because you
Mhm.
haven't felt this emotion and been able to express it this way. And
Yeah.
then once they do it, they're like, I have such a relief. But I can see where my biology was seriously blocking me from expressing and interacting with this energy. And I'm like, those are the defense mechanisms of the nervous system, and it's trying
Yeah.
to protect you. And there's going to be some times that you're going to have to go through that discomfort. It's going to be a tussle within you to access these tools and to
Mhm.
do what you might have been conditioned to think or childish or insignificant. It's like, this is about your body. This isn't about being 2 to 60. It's about, letting these emotions be expressed that possibly you've never felt. You might be 50 now
Mhm.
and never express this emotion. And so it's going to look awkward in your behavior because you've never interacted with this energy before. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, a lot of times people haven't been able to get a proper pathway for their healing because
Mhm.
everybody's trying to tell them what it should look like or what it ought to be, where it's like, well, let's discover what it is for you and what will bring you to activate that joy, to open your heart just a little bit to feel the fullness of
Mhm.
life, which feels like a threat. It's like, whoo. So I
Yeah.
appreciate, like, you've done alchemy, you've done the warrior work, and you're still doing it.
Yeah.
There's this perception like, oh, it's all going to be gone. It's like, no, I have to manage this. Like, I know my tools, I know to access myself. Yet the things that go on, I'm still working at to, you know, lower the volume of them, not be so entangled and enmeshed in them. Yet it's a real
Mhm.
thing. The nervous system gets activated with all of these thoughts and the vulnerability because it's a
Yeah.
threat. Like, to feel joy, oh boy, I don't know, because it's going to be taken away
Yeah.
from me. I don't want that.
Mhm.
I have a reflective question for you. I want to ask you to bring your awareness right now and to go back to your 18-year-old self. And you
Mhm.
have 3 words to tell your 18-year-old self to bring you to the journey to right now. What would those 3 words be?
Um, want. Do you want me to describe them or just
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
want because I believe that your want has to be bigger than your fear. And if it's not, then you'll never accomplish anything. Because I think that you're stronger than you think you are. Whenever you think you can't take anymore, um, I'm stronger. You're going to be stronger than you think you are. And I breathe. Breathe meaning just slow down, take time. It's all going to come in its own pace, at it in its own time. It's going to come. So just breathe and take everything in and be the person you want to be, but don't try to do it all at once. So just slow down a little bit.
Yeah, smell the flowers,
Hmm.
literally, so that
Hmm.
and the mindfulness tool, meditation tool that you're doing with the sunrise and sunset really
Hmm.
just allows you to feel the totality of things and be
Hmm.
connected into a higher power that's bigger than you, so that you can just feel all the feels and be held in that space. Because I do the same, I have that same practice to engage with that. I just have one more question. Do you find it difficult to receive?
Yes, all the time. And that goes back to my personality anyway. And then, there's so many aspects to that, but yes, I do. So when I was growing up, I was very self-independent person. As I got older, I was very independent. And then when I got to where I lost Caleb, I think the independence, it went up like 10 times, I don't want anybody to help me. And so now even, and then obviously with my divorce and back in November, and it goes back to the whole thing, like I can't depend on anybody else.
Mm,
And that's where it comes from. And so I had all these things. And then someone's like, hey, even something as simple as a compliment, I'm like, oh, thanks, whatever, no, no, and it's just hard to receive. It's hard to, like with Bella now and her childcare and just different things, it's hard for people to be like, hey, I'll come help you with this, or I'll help you, or, and I'm like, no, I got it. I got it. I got it. I'll figure it out. And that's my favorite words is like, I'll figure it out. And I think that comes with several different aspects of my life, but yeah, it's extremely hard to receive anything, whether, and I don't even think about gifts. Gifts I'll be like, no, take that back with you. But even something as simple as a compliment, it's hard. And it's
Mhm.
hard. And I mean, it just goes back to my beliefs, and you have to check those beliefs, and I'm actually working on receiving more, because that is a part of me that I haven't tapped into. And when I'm reading all about this self-care and self-love, that's one thing, is being able to accept. And it's hard. It's really hard, especially, I'm 40-ish. So, I've been 40-ish years, I've been, not receiving. So it's really hard. So that's a work in progress, but yeah, it's really hard to receive.
Yeah, that's part of your healing, because then the
Hmm.
anxiety will go down of some more of finding safety within yourself, because
Hmm.
safety within your body and safety in knowing that you're deserving of receiving
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
deserve.
because everybody always like, God, you've been through a lot. And I'm like, no, it's okay.
Yeah,
I'm fine, and I'm like, if you go back and you think about it, you're like, God dang, I have been through a lot. But, I try not to think of it, because I don't want to get into that deep, dark place again. But I think it's by me realizing, yes, I have been through a lot. I've made it through, and I actually go through everything. I, as I start doing that, and I've been doing that, it's easier to receive and ask. That's another thing. Like, I will not ask anybody for anything. If I have to move a 200-pound desk, I'm going to figure out a way to do it by myself. You know what I mean? Because that's hard too. But ask and receive kind of go hand in hand.
they do. It's part of your vulnerability. So
Hmm.
it's to be in your vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think it might be difficult to be in your feminine. You're a lot in your masculine energy.
Yeah. Yeah, I am.
That has protection.
I am with the job, and then obviously I'm the single parent. So
Mhm.
I take on both roles. And then the job. I mean, you've been in it. It's a male dominated job. And the group that I supervise right now, I have two females out of 26 men. You know what I mean? So you're in your masculine then too.
Yeah. So to go into the feminine takes a lot to be able to receive and have that softness, because the pain and everything else. Yet the work is to do the receiving and as visceral, like, this, it's not, I know a lot of people want to push people in the deep end, and I'm a deep end. Like, I just go and put myself through these real challenges, and people are like, why are you doing that? I'm like, I just know myself. And yet
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning more and more. It's like, start with the small things. The compliment, as you said, it's so visceral. And it's like, allow yourself just to be silent, not deflect it back. You don't even have to acknowledge it. It just have that silence, so that there's some receiving, not doing ping pong and deflecting it back.
Mm-hmm.
And viscerally how it feels inside your body when those things come in. Yet the more that you allow that silence, then your nervous system's getting rewired that, oh, we can accept this. Like, this is
Yeah.
okay and we're safe with this. And the little small things that then, you go bigger and bigger, yet it's that safety for that nervous system, so that it doesn't have those defense mechanisms up.
Oh, yeah.
Now I know the listeners are like, okay, enough, Nat. Where do I find June? So can you let the listeners know where they can find you?
Yeah. Well, if they have lost a child, I do have a group, and it's on Facebook. It's at Women Surviving Child Loss. And that group, just for women that have it's just for women that have lost children. And I did a group program up, and basically each week they go through something, a part of grief and stuff like that. And obviously it's free to everybody, but there's a whole bunch of goodness in there, and there's like 1,700 women in there right now that have lost at least one child. So if you have lost a child, that's the great place to start. And then obviously I'm I have a business page under the Serenity Dreamer, and I'm on Instagram, and I just got on TikTok. And but my TikTok, it's under the Serenity Dreamer, but I'm an author, and so you'll see my author stuff on there. That's more of my book stuff on there, and yeah, they can find me on there.
Okay. What is the latest book that you published? The title?
My book that I published last June, it's coming up on a year. It was called Mama You Don't Heal. And it's kind of funny. We were talking about this earlier. And it was written for women that had lost children, that have lost children. And it was written in a very raw, emotional, I was feeling exactly when I was feeling it. Thank God I waited 10 years, or it would have been a totally different book. But I kind of described what I went through in each step of it, and then I kind of gave them, hey, this is what helped me. It might help you. And it's basically wrapped around, the whole book is basically wrapped around is what the title says, Mama, you don't heal. We just have to learn how to deal with our loss. And that's why the way I feel still to this day is like you're never going to heal. There's not going to be a moment that you heal something. And that's kind of what it was wrapped around. And yeah, I wrote it for women, but I've gotten so many people that have read it because they knew somebody that went through child loss. And that, I guess, touching people that didn't know what to say to the person, they ghosted them, or they said all this stuff and they didn't know if it was right or wrong. It's helped them too. Because I think that everybody in life, they've lost at least one person, or know somebody that lost a child. Whether it's Another thing is like whether it's you lost them when you were pregnant for 4 weeks, or they lived until they were an adult. There is a lot of women that lose children that you might not even know about. So, but yeah, that was what my first book was about. My second book, let's knock on wood, I'm hoping will be out November of this year. And it's more gauged towards women in general that are mommy that are moms that want to live their purpose, but they don't know how to take the steps towards it. So that it's gauged towards moms. I guess you could say moms, because we're all moms. But yeah, that's what's going to be gauged to.
Beautiful. Um, the alchemy that you have done in your life of taking the impurities and turning them into gold, yet not just keeping the gold for yourself, sharing it with others, is very admirable, June. It
Yeah,
really is.
I think one of the biggest things that I struggled with was like, what's my purpose now? When I lost Caleb, and I think a lot of people go through that because your purpose was your child and to be this great mom and raise your child the best you can. And I that the reason why I'm doing it, that I've, hey, I'm going to tell you exactly how I was, like one section in the book, I told you I wanted to die, and I think it goes along with, I feel like this is my purpose. This is my path to bring awareness to child loss. And I think that's why I can do and I can talk about it and not be a basket case, is because it is a purpose. So I like, for me, it's not admirable. It's more of, this is my purpose and I just want to bring awareness. And I think that's how you know that you're doing the right thing and that you're down the right path when, it feels like this is your purpose.
When I say admirable, what I mean by that is that you continue to show up in the everyday. And
Yeah.
some days are really challenging.
Oh yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
warrior work.
Yeah, it is. And another part of that is your those days. Like I'm coming back to doing podcasts now and getting out there more, because I had to take that time for me when my husband decided he wanted a divorce.
Mhm.
Because I had to reset in my mind. And I think that's part of being, and part of what you're saying is just knowing your limits.
Yeah, like I say, there's no heal, it's healing, it's in action. So, you have a wound and at any time it's not bothering you, but a new life event can come up and then the wound just activates some more. And
Yeah.
it's like an old injury. You could start walking, then you do a wrong twist, and it's like, oh, the old injury got reactivated and there's pain. So that's
Yeah.
why healing to build the tools that when you feel the trigger or the wounding and the dysregulation, that you understand, okay, let me face the pain and let me interact with the emotions in a different way than I have. I want to ask you, for the listeners and anybody that's listening in, what I understand the most is challenging is witnessing pain in other people. And
Mhm.
so rather than those that may be going through child loss, I would ask you to speak to those that are supporting or know somebody. What would you give them as an offer of how to show up for somebody that has lost a child?
Yeah. I don't think there's nothing perfect to say. There's nothing perfect to do. Obviously you have, you can help them do laundry, you can bring food, like the normal stuff. But there is something that goes so deep and so healing for that person just by showing up, just by being there. I had several people when I was going through my loss that just showed up. We didn't talk about much because I didn't want to talk, I didn't want to eat, I didn't want to do any of that, but they just sat there with me in my silence. And they might have said something, just something little or whatever, but those times meant the most to me out of everything everybody did for me. Obviously had the cards, the food, the people coming and going, and but the people that came and just sat there with me didn't know what to do, never lost a child, never been through it, just being there for them. It's not doing something, it's just saying, hey, I'm just going to come hang out. We'll watch TV if you want to, or we'll sit in silence, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to come and chill. That is the most important thing. And it goes back to the whole thing of when you go through child loss, you think you're the only one, and you think you're all alone on this little island. And that helped me with that part of it, was that I wasn't alone, and then obviously when I started, going through it and learn more about it, there's millions of us out here, but at that time that's the best thing you can do for somebody. It's not cooking, it's not taking them out to eat because God knows they don't want to go out to eat. It's not, you know, doing their laundry or taking their daughter to school, because there's a lot of people that have other children. I was lucky I did not at the time, but just being there for them, sitting in silence with them if that's what they need.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
presence, just
Mm-hmm.
giving presence and letting somebody know that they're connected to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they can be in their mess and somebody's not telling them that they have to be something different, that they
Yeah.
can meet them exactly where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So when
Yeah.
you see those mental health memes where, somebody's under a blanket and somebody's asking, are you okay? And they're like, no. And do you want to come out? They're like, no. And then you see the person come sit inside the blanket with them. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's that presence. So that
Mm-hmm.
you just meet me where I am and you can witness the pain so that
Mm-hmm.
I see that I have the ability and the capacity to face this and that I have other people that are supporting me and, believe in me and want that belonging and that
Mm-hmm.
importance and that respect. So, yeah, and very powerful words because a lot of times people think it's in what you say or what you do, and it's like your presence, your energy is the most impactful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's hard for people to think, oh, all I have to do is go sit over there, but literally that's all you have to do, and if they're crying, grab their hand, touch them if they want to be touched. But other than that, that's all that they need. That is all that they need.
And literally, it's not a literal thing because you'll see that when you're around somebody that is grieving, the palpable energy that goes on and that you feel helpless, not being able to stop this pain for somebody. That's what I mean about the witnessing of pain and being responsible for your own emotions and just holding space for somebody else to have their emotions. That is warrior work. So those that can sit there and be in the silence with you, um, they've possibly done their own inner work to be able to hold that space or
Mhm.
understand the significance of it. I want to thank you for such a deep dive and vulnerable conversation. And I want to thank Kaleb and Bella for being in the conversation and you know how they light up their mama. It's really appreciated. So thank you for everything that you're doing and the light that you're bringing forth in the world, June. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I really do.
Please remember to be kind to yourself. Hey, you made it all the way here. I appreciate you and your time. If you found value in this conversation, please share it out. If there was somebody that popped into your mind, take action and share it out with them. It possibly may not be them that will benefit. It's that they know somebody that will benefit from listening to this conversation. So please take action and share out the podcast. You can find us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok under Lift Oneself. And if you want to inquire about the work that I do and the services that I provide to people, come over on my website, come into a discovery call, liftoneself.com. Until next time, please remember to be kind and gentle with yourself. You matter.